Welcome to the ABC of Open Access Publishing webinar. My name is Eeva Savolainen and I work in Aalto University's Research Services. Today, my colleague Katri Seitsonen and I will walk you through the basics of Open Access Publishing. Our topics include the definition of open access, some key considerations before submitting your manuscript, such as journal quality, licenses, and funder requirements, and some practical tips for open access publishing, especially at Aalto University. In essence, open access means free access to scientific information. Over the past 20 years, various international, national, and local initiatives have been established to accelerate the progress to make research articles freely available. One of the earliest initiatives was the Budapest Open Access Initiative, while a more recent one is Plan S, which Katri will discuss later. In Finland, various policies have been developed as part of open science coordination. And locally, Aalto University launched its own open science and research policy in 2020, which is updated on a regular basis. As you can see from these figures, the share of scientific open access articles has increased significantly over the past 10 years. In 2013, only 14% of scientific articles in Finland were open access, while in 2023, nearly 79% were openly available, which is quite a remarkable change. At Aalto University, the change has been even more dramatic, with the proportion of open access articles rising from 10% in 2013 to 86% in 2023. Here I have listed some essential terms related to open access publishing. First, let's look at the types of open access. Open access journals are typically divided into three categories: gold, diamond, and hybrid. In gold open access journals, all articles are openly available and a publication fee must be paid. In diamond open access journals, all articles are openly available, but there is no publication fee. Hybrid journals offer a mix, with some articles openly available and others behind a paywall. If you choose to publish open access in a hybrid journal, a publication fee is required. Green open access is not a journal category, but refers to the practice of self-archiving an article in a repository. Article versions have specific terms as well. A preprint is the version submitted to a journal. Postprint refers to the author-accepted manuscript or the final accepted manuscript that has been peer-reviewed. The published version or version of record is the publisher's typeset and formatted version. Typically, most publishers allow archiving the postprint or author-accepted manuscript version in a repository, but not the published version. Other essential terms in open access publishing include the article processing charge, or APC, which is the fee paid to the publisher for open access. Embargo refers to the publishing delay imposed by the publisher on the self-archived version. And a repository is a digital archive where publications are preserved and made available, such as institutional repositories of universities or e-print repositories like arXiv. This figure presents the different types of open access in a slightly different way. On the left are the open access types with fees, gold and hybrid, and on the right are the types without fees, diamond and green. There are various commercial services where researchers often showcase their work, such as ResearchGate or academia.edu. However, most publishers allow self-archiving only in institutional repositories or non-commercial e-print services and not in these commercial platforms like ResearchGate. This highlighted excerpt on the slide is from the web pages of the ACM publisher. A useful tool for finding information on the policies of different journals and publishers is Sherpa Romeo, which aggregates publisher open access and archiving policies. So, what should you consider before submitting? First, the quality of the journal. There are several important factors to consider when choosing a publication channel. You should evaluate open access options and publication fees in relation to the funder's requirements and, of course, your budget. You would likely prefer to publish in a high-quality journal. There are several indicators that measure the impact of journals, such as the Journal Impact Factor by Clarivate Analytics, SiteScore, SJR, and SNP indicators based on Elsevier Scopus database, and the Finnish Publication Forum, which is a national classification of publication channels created by the Finnish research community. Finally, carefully consider the reliability of a journal. The number of questionable publication channels is unfortunately increasing. So-called predatory journals charge fees for publishing but do not provide proper peer review or peer review at all. In addition, some formerly reliable journals have been hijacked by unethical publishers. Journal hijacking refers to the unauthorized takeover of a journal's brand by a third party. Publishing in a predatory journal could potentially harm your career. Serving as a reviewer or editor in a predatory journal can also be considered ethical misconduct. Not all questionable journals have malicious intentions, however. Sometimes shortcomings in editorial quality may simply result from a lack of resources, for example. This is how you can try to identify reliable and questionable journals. On the left, we have the characteristics of a reliable scientific journal. First of all, the journal has an international standard serial number, ISSN. The journal is typically indexed in well-known databases such as Scopus, Web of Science, Directory of Open Access Journals, or the Publication Forum. The journal has a clear and focused scope outlining its specific area of study. The editor and members of the editorial board are recognized experts in their fields. The journal is affiliated with or sponsored by a reputable society or academic institution. The journal provides detailed and transparent instructions to authors, including information on the peer review process, author fees, copyright policies, and licensing. And finally, the publisher is a member of respected organizations like the Open Access Scholarly Publishers Association or the Committee on Publication Ethics. And on the right, you will find the traits of a questionable journal. The journal's title may closely resemble that of a well-known journal. The journal falsely claims inclusion in well-known databases such as Scopus or Web of Science. The journal scope may be ambiguous or spans multiple unrelated fields, lacking clear focus. Known researchers may be listed as editorial board members without their consent or even knowledge. Authors receive aggressive marketing emails promoting the journal. The peer review process is either insufficient or entirely absent. And the journal website lacks essential information such as contact details or comprehensive author instruction, including details on peer review process, author fees, and copyright policies. So, how can you address questionable journals? You can use so-called whitelists to identify reliable journals, including the Directory of Open Access Journals, the Publication Forum, Scopus, and Web of Science. Please note that in the Publication Forum, level 0 includes both questionable journals and reliable journals, such as new journals or university series. Therefore, you should be extra cautious if the journal is listed at level 0 in the Publication Forum. Finally, you can also visit the ThinkCheck Submit webpage, which offers a variety of tools and practical resources to help researchers identify trustworthy publishers and journals. When in doubt, you can always consult your colleagues and your library as well. There are also blacklists of questionable journals. Cabell's predatory reports is unfortunately behind a paywall, but the criteria are openly available. One of the most well-known blacklists was so-called Beall's list, maintained by Jeffrey Beall, a librarian and professor at the University of Colorado. This list was discontinued in 2017 due to concerns about transparency, broad inclusion criteria, and publisher complaints. All right, that concludes my part. I'll now hand it over to my colleague Katri.
And next, we will give you a brief introduction to Creative Commons licenses, which are widely used in open access publishing. Creative Commons licenses are global, machine-readable licenses which are used for open access publishing, both for publications and data. Every Creative Commons license ensures that creators will get credit for their work, and the copyright ownership will always remain with the licensor. Adding a Creative Commons license for your work makes it easier for others to reuse the work in a way that you have defined beforehand. And this is in contrast that if you publish your article non-open access, usually you need to sign a copyright transfer agreement, and then the publisher can control how the material is reused. There are 6 different Creative Commons license types, and these are based on 4 basic terms: attribution BY, non-commercial NC, no derivatives ND, and share-alike SA. And the first license is attribution BY, which is the most permissive of the Creative Commons licenses, and it allows maximum dissemination and use of the licensed work. So this will let others copy, redistribute, remix, transform, and build upon a work both for commercial and non-commercial purposes, as long as the credit is given to the copyright holder. And if the material is reused, it must be indicated clearly whether any changes were made to it. Attribution CBY is included in most of the CC licenses, meaning that anyone using the licensed work must include a proper attribution and indicate if any changes were made. And the CC BY is also required by many major funders, both for publications and research data. Then we have non-commercial NC and no derivatives ND. You can combine both of these with the CC BY. So first one is CC BY NC. It's almost the same as the CC BY, but the material can be reused for non-commercial purposes only. CC BY ND means that both commercial and non-commercial use is allowed, but if the material is modified in any way, the modified material may not be distributed again. You can also combine NC and ND together, so it will be a CC BY NC ND, which is the most restrictive of the Creative Commons licenses. So here the reuse is limited for non-commercial purposes only, and modified material may not be distributed again. Then we have the share-alike SA. If you combine this with the CC BY, you will get CC BY SA. And here again, it's the same terms as in CC BY, but if you modify the material, the modified material must be distributed under the same license as the original. You can combine SA with the NC non-commercial. So here again, the reuse is limited for non-commercial purposes only, and the modified material must be distributed under the same license as the original. Then next, we will briefly talk about funders' open access requirements, and the Creative Commons licenses are currently an important part of these as well. Funders have had their open access requirements for many years already. In 2018, an international open access initiative called Plan S was launched by so-called Coalition S funders, a group of international and national research funders. Both Horizon Europe and Research Council of Finland are part of this Coalition S. And the Plan S principles in open access publishing apply to projects started in 2022 or later, receiving funding from each of these funders. And the aim of the Plan S initiative is to maximize the accessibility and impact of research which has been conducted with public funding. And this is done by requiring immediate open access to peer-reviewed publications and the use of open Creative Commons licenses. And here the CC BY license is required. And at the same time, the funders are trying to push the publishers to change their current business models from subscription-based business model towards more transparent open access publishing. No science should be locked behind the paywalls is the aim of this open access initiative. If your project is funded by an external funder, always check your funder-specific requirements from the funding decisions from the terms and conditions. And if you are subject to planning principles, you can utilize Journal Checker tool, a tool developed by the Coalition S funders. From here, you can check whether the publication channel is compliant with your funder's open access policy. And here we have included an example of Plan S from the Horizon Europe open access mandate. And according to Horizon Europe Open Access Mandate, all peer-reviewed publications must be made openly available through a trusted repository under the following terms. So here is the immediate open access. So no embargo periods are allowed. And the immediate open access must be provided either to the published version, to the version of record, or to peer-reviewed author-accepted manuscript called AAM. The second requirement is the use of open licenses, and here the CC BY or equivalent is required for articles, and the CC BY NC, CC BY ND, or a combination of these, CC BY NC, ND, are allowed for monographs and other long texts. And the third requirement is that it's not enough that the paper is open access from the publisher website. In addition, it must be deposited to a trusted repository to guarantee the long-term preservation. And here it's good to keep in mind that personal websites, publisher websites, commercial services like ResearchGate are not considered as trusted repositories, but you can utilize, for example, institutional repositories. In terms of open access fees, Horizon Europe reimburses open access fees from open access journals as project costs, and this way encourages researchers to publish in open access journals. Then we are moving to the next section C, open access publishing in practice. And this is very Aalto University specific. We go through Aalto services and practicalities. So please keep in mind that if you are from another institution, the services and practices may vary in your institution. How to publish open access in Aalto University? There are basically two options if you are publishing your articles in the journals. So first one is to publish your article open access in a journal. Here you can use either gold, hybrid, or diamond open access as presented by Eva before. Please keep in mind that in gold and hybrid open access, there always an APC fee applies, and diamond open access refers to journals which have no fees for both readers nor for the authors. We recommend that when you publish your articles open access, you would always publish them under the open CC BY license. And as said, this is also required by many funders nowadays. If the journal requires an APC fee, you can check whether Aalto University's open access agreements would cover these fees on behalf of you. And for long-term preservation, Open Science and Acris team deposits all open access articles published under open licenses to Acris repository on behalf of the authors. The second option is to use self-archiving, so-called green open access, as a way to open access publishing. And here the self-archived version is usually the peer-reviewed author-accepted manuscript, which can be archived, for example, in Acris repository, which is Aalto's institutional repository. There are no fees in this option. Please keep in mind that the publishers don't necessarily allow using open licenses in green open access. So if you are subject, for example, to planning principles, check the publisher requirements and terms and conditions already before you submit the paper to a journal and choose whether to publish, for example, through Gold Open Access or Green Open Access. You can use Sherpa Romeo service to check publisher self-archiving policy, including embargo periods there. And if you wish to use self-archiving in ACRI's repository, you can send us the peer-reviewed and accepted manuscript version, and we will archive it to ACRI's repository on behalf of you, taking into account the publisher's self-archiving policy. Then very shortly about Aalto University open access agreements. These are usually national level consortium agreements negotiated by the FINELIP consortium. So Aalto is a member of the FINELIP, like all the other universities in Finland as well. And our agreements are so-called read and publish agreements, which means that these agreements cover both subscription fees and open access fees centrally on behalf of the researchers. Usually these are covered by the libraries, and in Aalto University, the research services cover the fees on behalf of the researchers and departments. Please keep in mind that in open access journals, usually a discount on open access fee is available through these agreements. And these agreements are valid 1 or 2 years at a time, and the renewals of the agreements are negotiated centrally by the FINELIP consortium. Important to remember is that only corresponding authors affiliated with this consortium institutions can utilize the agreements. And here we have included a workflow, how you can utilize the read and publish agreements in Aalto University. So first of all, always check the details from our website. There are detailed journal lists provided by the publisher, and other eligibility criteria set by the publisher is available there. And when you submit your manuscript, use your Aalto email so that the publisher will recognize you, identify you as eligible to utilize the agreement and publish open access without any fees. Once your article is accepted, you will receive more instructions from the publisher, and here you should choose the open access option and the open license for your work. And again, we recommend choosing the CC BY license. After that, it may be that the publisher requires that your affiliation is verified by your institution, and once it's done, your article will be published open access under the open license. Then shortly about Green Open Access and how you can utilize this in Aalto University. So here we have an example of a non-open access article at the publisher website. So if it looks like this, then you are not able to access the article PDF itself. It requires you to pay a separate fee of 40 euros. Or if you have an institutional subscription in the form of read and publish agreement, then you may have access to the article, although it's not published open access. But it's good to keep in mind that although you would be able to access the article, it's still not open access article, and it's not published under open license, which means that the reuse requires a permission from the publisher. Then if you would like to use self-archiving, so-called green open access, so if your article is published behind the subscription, like in the previous slide example shows, then you can utilize the self-archiving for providing open access to the peer-reviewed manuscript version. And you can check the self-archiving policy from the publisher website or from Sherpa Romeo. It's very easy to use. You just need to type in the journal title, and then the tool will tell you what is the publisher's policy for the accepted version. And here, for example, there is an embargo of 12 months, which needs to be taken into account when self-archiving the accepted manuscript version of the article. And it also says where you can self-archive the article and other conditions set by the publisher. And as a rule, the correct version for self-archiving is the peer-reviewed and author-accepted manuscript, which is the version peer-reviewed by the journal, but without the final editing and layout. And as a rule, the publishers allow self-archiving in funder, institutional, or field-specific repositories, but don't accept commercial repositories like ResearchGate. And please keep in mind that the publishers may not allow sharing manuscripts under the open Creative Commons licenses. If you are from Aalto University and you wish to utilize self-archiving, here is a checklist for you. So always make sure first that you have a permission from your co-authors to self-archive the article in Aalto's repository. Then you can send the peer-reviewed accepted manuscript to us to manuscripts@aalto.fi. And Open Science and Acris team will upload the manuscript to Acris repository. We will always check the publisher's policy and terms before we do that and take into account, for example, the embargoes set by the publisher. And then your manuscript will be openly available through our repository either immediately or after this embargo period. And it's good to know that these manuscripts are always linked to the published version, including the DOI number and a citation reference to the original article. Then very briefly about preprints. So the Green Open Access I was talking about was about self-archiving peer-reviewed manuscript versions, and publishing preprints is early sharing of research work. And here with preprint, we mean the manuscript version which is submitted for peer review, so it hasn't been peer reviewed yet. But these can be published in preprint servers or field-specific repositories prior or at the time of the submission to a journal. Why you should publish preprints? This is a way to speed up scientific communication because, as we know, the peer review processes may take several months. And this way you are able to increase the visibility and accessibility of your work because these are open access to everyone. We recommend that you will always check the publisher's policy also in preprint sharing so that there are no conditions which would make this impossible to use. And as a rule, the publishers allow publishing preprints in non-commercial repositories, but may deny uploading them to commercial services like ResearchGate. And please keep in mind that the funders require open access to peer-reviewed publications, which means that the preprints, which are the versions prior to peer review, don't comply with this requirement, although they are available open access. Then we discussed about the Creative Commons licenses before and that we recommend these in open access publishing. But for preprints, we actually recommend more restrictive licenses. For example, the archive non-exclusive license to distribute or other no reuse licensed, because the work hasn't been published anywhere else yet. And then finally, a summary from our training. So publish open access under the CC BY whenever you can. And remember that many publishers don't allow posting articles to ResearchGate or other commercial services. If you are receiving funding from an external funder, make sure that you familiarize yourself with your funder's open access mandate. And if open access publishing requires an APC fee, check whether your institution provides freedom publish agreements which could cover the APC fees on behalf of you. And also remember Green Open Access as a one-way for open access. There are no fees in this option. And we recommend that you publish preprints to speed up scientific communication. Okay, and here are some sources for further reading in these topics. And now I would like to thank you for listening.